You're listening to the Lead On podcast, where we discuss experiences in the armed forces while exploring lessons from military leaders.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Lead On podcast, where we're going to be learning lessons from military leaders. I'm David Deary, the president of the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. We're a nonprofit that we are building America's leaders, and we're doing it all over the world. With me today is one of the board members. In fact, she's one of the founding board members with me, a former shipmate from back on my USS Peleliu days, for all you sailors out there. I have Diane McQueen Gibson. Diane, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. Thank you for what you do for the enlisted military service member and just what you did for 30 years in the service. I'm excited for the next few minutes for people to get to know who Diane is and some of the leadership accomplishments that you had over those 30 years. But before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of it, I like to start things off with just a softball question. Not that you're going to get a hard question after this one, just something just kind of break the ice. So, we've all given and have received leadership advice our whole life. And so I'm just curious, what is the worst piece of leadership advice that someone ever gave you?
That's a good question. I think that, you could take it, you take leadership advice many ways. And I think one of them I received was treat everyone equally. And on the surface, that sounds like that's good advice. You should treat everyone equally. But coupled with another piece of advice, which was great advice, was you can't always be the hammer. So if you imagine, say, 10 nails, and you're nailing them into the wall, and some of them, go straight in with one or two knocks, and one or two of them bend. And so I kind of see that as a human. The point is to see that as a human, that the human sometimes. You give them the advice, you tell them where they need to go, and they go straight in and they get it done. Fire and forget. And then other times, if you treat everyone the same, you hit too hard, you hit that nail too hard, and you bend them. They are not equally mentally strong, or they, for whatever reason, they can't accept the direction the same way. All sailors, all people do not accept advice, direction, guidance the same way.
Oh, that is fantastic advice. You got to lead. It's going to be challenges when we're leading a large group, and I know that you've led hundreds at the same time. So how do you hit? Now we're going to deviate just a second based on that. So how do you hit? When you're leading 100 people, how do you not lead them all the same?
Well, it's important to treat everyone with respect, so like I said, You have to take that advice, take a step back and think about it for a second. You don't treat everyone the same, but you treat everyone with respect. And as I said, some people, some sailors, you tell them what you need at quarters or, at the morning meeting, and they got it, and they move forward throughout their day. But then there's others that you can see that you're not reaching. You can see it on their face. You can see it in the way they do their job. You can see it how they go about their day. So those are the folks that I kind of seek out. If I'm walking the mess decks during cleaning stations or going through the berthings, I seek out that sailor, and I try to connect on wherever they're at. I remember a sailor cleaning the mess decks specifically, very quiet sailor, kept to himself. And he had a book in his back pocket. So he liked to read. So that's how I connected to him. What are you reading? And so I would make it a point to go to him every once in a while. What are you reading? And he'd, tell me, and that's kind of how he opened up to me. And so I could feel that was how you connect to that person,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Once you start connecting with people, you build that trust. Once you build that trust, boy, then the influence you can have, the positive influence and the leadership impact. That's fantastic. So tell me about Diane. So you joined the Navy pretty shortly out of high school, around the 1980s. So there wasn't a lot of women joining the military. What what drove you? Do you have a military family? Did your parents serve? What drove you to join the Navy and not the Air Force or the Coast Guard?
So, right, back in the 80s, not a lot of women. I never had a female chief, never in the entire time, except for boot camp. My RCPO was a PRC, female. But okay, so I joined the Navy. First, there's several reasons, and you know how it is. It kind of comes to a, comes to a head. But I was in a lot of trouble. I had gotten married to a person who was very abusive to me, physically abusive. He used to choke me until I would pass out. And it got to a point where I knew that I was gonna, one of us was gonna die. We were doing a lot of drugs. Him specifically. It kind of started out where selling drugs, and then. Once you get involved in drugs and it overtakes you, it takes, I feel like they take away the human, and you become, you're not really a person once you're addicted. So he was, and I'm not trying to give him excuses. He was filthy, but he abused me a lot. And at that point in my life, my older brother was in the Army. And, I looked at the military as a way to get away, as an escape. I was just planning to escape. I knew he would not allow me to leave, but I was planning to escape. I had written a letter to my brother, and I just offhandedly told him I was going to join the Navy. The reason I chose the Navy was because my uncle and my dad were sailors, but my dad was 4 years in the Navy. He found the letter. My husband at the time found the letter, and he's, of course, part of domestic violence is control, and he wanted to control the situation. So he took me to the recruiter's office, seeing an opportunity for him to have more money. He took me to the recruiter's office, who was someone he had went to school with, and that's how it started. That's how I joined the Navy. But the reason it was Navy over other services was, like I said, because of my dad. I wanted him to be proud of me, as most kids do. But 18 years old, and
so how did the Navy change you? Was there and I don't necessarily, from what you just said, doesn't sound like Diane needed a change. You looked like you were changing. You were getting out of an abusive situation. You knew that you couldn't continue that way. So you joined the military. Was it all it cracked up to be? Why didn't you just do the 4 years and get out? What was it about? You just got done saying there wasn't a female chief. And for those that aren't familiar, in the military, to make E7 in the Navy, that's called a chief petty officer. And you've been in quite some time. In fact, fewer than 20% ever reached that position in 20 years. So it's even harder for a woman, especially back in the 80s. So what was it that motivated you to want to stick around?
Well, my family was not close. My mom left when I was 8 or 9. And so we grew up with my dad. It was my dad and my two brothers, older brothers. And we just weren't close. I think my dad was overwhelmed. He's not a bad person. I just think, again, 70s, 80s, there wasn't a lot of men who were single parents. So he was, working every day, and, we had a roof over our heads, that kind of thing, but he just wasn't involved in our upbringing. And so I think that led to my early marriage and, like I said, being in such an abusive relationship. I'm not holding my parents responsible. They just were not, they just weren't involved.
Well, it was like you said, it was different back then. Unlike today, where kids will hold us responsible to a degree.
Right.
It's like thinking back to what was things like back then, and they do the best that they can based on how. And often, just like leadership, right? How many leaders? How often do we become the leader that we were led by, good, bad, or indifferent? Sometimes as parents, we parent the way we were parented. without realizing there's another way.
Right. Or do our best to go the exact opposite way, and I will not be that parent. So, I think what I was looking for was I was looking for guidance. I was looking for direction. I was looking for a family. And I think and I can tell you, I remember specifically in the first 4 years, my first enlistment, I was saying to myself that I found my family. Yeah.
And at what point did that sea bag get left on the pier? Your ex-husband.
And that's I'm glad you said that. Again, part of the family, I'm aviation ordnanceman, and we work as a team in just about everything we do. We're a close-knit family. That's how we're taught to take care of each other, to do things together. We work as a team. My very first command, the abuse was continuing. He was there. I was in El Centro, and my command found out about it. My second class, my chief found out about it, and they went with me to court so that I could get. I was too afraid to get a restraining order. Because I knew what would come next. And that was more abuse, pain. And so they went with me and they made sure I got that restraining order. I can think of a AO2, Aviation Ordnanceman second class, who went with me, who invited me into his home. His wife and he invited me into their home with their 2 children and, kind of mentored me and helped me grow up a little bit, helped me grow up a lot and, showed me, people who care about each other, how they should act. Kind of funny story. He told me, the AOs took charge of me, and this AO2, my supervisor, he took me out into the desert. I know that sounds scary, but he took me out into the desert. I know. 10 gauge. It was 10 gauge. Okay, and he taught me how to shoot his 10 gauge shotgun. And that is a terrible idea, as a leader. But again, this is in the 80s. Okay. And the overarching idea that he was showing me how to protect myself. So, there was a lot of different ways. As I said, he and his wife invited me into their home many times. And, just gave me a lot of mentorship and guidance and help along my path. So,
do you find that it's very heavy and very sad and unfortunate and, what you experienced. However, I've known you a lot of years and I know that did not shape you as a victim and hurt you. You thrived. And I'll just share people that may not know that at your retirement, you were only the 5th ever female Master Chief of your rate as an aviation ordnanceman. So over those 30 years, how often did you find that your experiences helped you in your leadership and moving up through the ranks as well as helping others?
I think it helped me a lot. I think instead of, the things that I've experienced, instead of making me more fearful or keeping to myself, I wanted to get out there and kind of, have empathy and help especially other females or, victims of abuse, move forward, move ahead, see what they are able to do. And what they are able to accomplish. So that's very important to me. And again, aviation ordnancemen, that's very important for me to be able to help them move forward, to succeed, and be happy.
So how do you help these aviation ordnancemen that you speak of? And I'm pretty sure you say AO as part of every paragraph. So how are you helping them today?
Okay, so for a long time, that first command shaped me in a lot of ways, that they looked out for me, not just the chief, but the younger AOs, brought me in and made me part of their family. And so for many, many years, I've been part of the Association of Aviation Ordnancemen. And, you would think those in the Navy who are familiar with that rate would think, oh, they just go to the bar and drink. But
they don't just, they do more
we
than
might
that.
do some of that, but we just, everything we do here at my local chapter is in service to the community, is in service to sailors and Marines, is in service to other AOs. And we have a, Navy-wide, Marine-wide Aviation Ordnanceman of the Year. And that is selected. I mean, this year we had 64 entries across the Navy and Marine Corps. And we got together, and it took us about 8 hours, and we picked out the best one, and that person represents all of us. But I mean, that's a nice feather in somebody's cap to add to their package for maybe Chief Petty Officer, or for maybe LDO, something like that. And then we do we own a piece of highway here, or we do the Adopt a Highway with the state, where once a month we go and pick up trash along the Highway 75 here in San Diego. And then we every year around the holiday time, we have the holiday hand up, which we consider not a handout, but a hand up. So we take names of Navy and Marine Corps aviation ordnancemen that are maybe struggling, maybe in the lower ranks, not making a lot of money, have, kids, and maybe need a little help. So we end up providing them with gift cards to help out during Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, with whatever their holiday is. Wow. Yeah, we do that every year.
Well, Diane, we're just about out of time, and there's so much more. I'd love to hear your service stories about the ships you've been on. I'd love to, I'm curious if you ever remarried and how that's been. So we're just going to have you back at a later date. But before you go, I do want to ask one final question. So we opened with a little kind of fun question. So let's close with something kind of fun. We all make leadership decisions, and we think at the time the decision that we're making is the best decision to be made. But I'm sure there's probably been a time that you made a pretty bad leadership decision, but it had a lucky outcome that you probably learned from. Could you share anything with us before you leave?
Okay. I can think of on my last ship, Theodore Roosevelt. I can think of we were on deployment, and there was a chief I can think of who he had a very rough exterior. He was, anytime you spoke to him, the offensive comments and the offensive, language, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy's a mess. What do I do with him? But you get to know him a little bit deeper, and there was a softer interior where he was very concerned with sailors. And we had this one division that was kind of a mismatch, kind of lots of personalities, lots of requirements, and due to some medical problems, we ended up, not his, but we put the chief in there, and he did amazing things. On the exterior, you're like, oh my God, you're kind of covering your eyes, but he really connected with those sailors, and they really appreciated him and gained a lot from him. And I didn't think that was going to go well. I thought it was a really bad decision, but I was kind of forced into a corner, and it worked out. It was great. He did a great job.
So you controlled the strength of the hammer on that particular nail.
Yes.
And you didn't bend it. That's great. Well, listen, Diane, thank you again for joining us. And everyone, again, thank you for tuning in to Lead On, Lessons from Military Leaders, sponsored by the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. Hey, you can learn more about how we're building America's leaders. Go to our website at www.enlistedleadershipfoundation.org. Tune in on our future broadcasts, dropping every 1st and the 15th of the month on military paydays. And until next time, lead on.